The amber glow of the reception hall cascaded across the polished granite of Uncle Victor's Manhattan penthouse, dancing off the crystal fixtures like countless silent critiques. I'm Aria Patel. I am 34 years old. Tonight, I was merely another faceless figure in a crowd of tailored suits and couture dresses at the Blackwood family's summer solstice celebration. The atmosphere buzzed with manufactured sincerity. Conversations too rehearsed. Smiles are too practiced. I lingered by the champagne fountain in my deep navy silk gown. Understated yet refined. Holding a flute of sparkling water I hadn't touched in nearly 15 minutes, making it the longest relationship I'd had with a drink all evening. The space was saturated with affluence. Sandalwood, designer fragrances, fine wool, and fresh orchids imported specifically for the evening. I counted at least 3 people who seemed to mistake wealth for personality. Aria, Uncle Victor's voice cut through the ambience like a violin played slightly off-key. Still answering phones at that digital company, what's it called again? Meridian Innovations, I responded calmly. And I'm executive assistant to the CEO. His onyx cufflinks caught the light as he chuckled softly. Darling. You're far too brilliant to be scheduling someone else's meetings. You should be directing something by now. I nodded, my smile precisely calibrated for politeness. I didn't mention that I had been directing something when Morgan Foster's directors had discreetly named me acting CEO 8 weeks ago after an unexpected departure. Just yesterday, I'd completed a $350 million merger that would transform our industry position permanently. But I wasn't here to showcase my achievements. I was here to observe, and perhaps to enjoy the free hors d'oeuvres, which were the only genuine things in the room. My cousin Blake beamed as he sauntered over, one hand in his custom tuxedo pocket, the other balancing a scotch. He'd recently been appointed Senior Director of Strategic Partnerships at Blackwood Enterprises, an embellished title for someone who spent more time on fairways than in boardrooms. His business cards might as well have read Professional Nepotism Beneficiary. I heard Morgan Foster is expanding, he said, nudging my elbow. I can make some introductions for you. We need administrative support and compliance officers. I took another measured sip. Thanks, Blake, but I'm content where I am. He smirked. Contentment is for people who've given up trying. Perhaps he was right. I had given up trying to validate myself to them. Their concept of achievement had never included someone like me. Besides, I was saving my energy for actual work, not performing wealth theater in penthouse parties. 12 years earlier, when I was merely 22, I'd sat in this very penthouse in Uncle Victor's cherry wood-paneled library, with a tablet full of business proposals and determination in my heart. Fresh from Columbia, I'd presented a firm that would assist women-owned enterprises scale using data-driven market insights. Uncle Victor reclined in his chair, unimpressed, examining my proposal with all the enthusiasm of someone reading the terms and conditions on a software update. Consulting? Sounds unstable. Aunt Regina tittered. Sweetheart, you'd make an exceptional executive assistant. You have that organizational quality. The way she said organizational quality made it sound like a terminal diagnosis. I smiled through their condescension, nodded when they suggested, perhaps in the future. I returned to my tiny apartment in Queens that evening, removed my pumps, and stood barefoot on my cramped balcony, making a silent promise to the humid New York night. I'll create something so significant they'll pretend they always had faith in me. And now here I was, Morgan Foster's new CEO, quietly confirmed but publicly unannounced. The signatures on our $350 million agreement with an international transportation conglomerate barely dry. The communications team already drafting my profile for Business Insider. Let Aunt Regina keep her condescending smiles because soon they'd be hosting another gala and this time my image would grace the invitation, hopefully a better photo than my driver's license where I look like I'm being held hostage. I didn't build it for recognition. I built it because I needed to demonstrate, if only to myself, that I transcended their dismissals. I named it Elevar Consulting, a word meaning to elevate in Spanish, acknowledging the heights I intended to reach. It began above a family-owned restaurant in Queens, the kind of place that smells of spices and determination. The walls were inadequate, the heating inconsistent, and the Wi-Fi faltered during important calls, blinking off with the reliability of a politician's promises. But I had aspiration. A computer and resolve. No one in my family had ever truly seen me. They believed they'd smothered me with doubt. In reality, they provided me the tools to forge my own journey. Elevar wasn't simply a company. It was a silent revolution. My initial client was a struggling textile designer approaching insolvency. I dedicated every available hour analyzing their expenses, restructuring supplier agreements, reimagining their retail strategy from the foundation up. When their profits increased 27% in one quarter, word spread rapidly through New York's entrepreneurial community. By 25, I sensed the beginning of something authentic, something truly mine. But I understood better than to place my name prominently. So I remained in the background, allowing partners to represent the deals while I coordinated everything from behind the scenes: financial structuring, expansion strategies, capital presentations. My name never appeared in business journals. That was intentional. I was like the ghostwriter of business success stories, except I wasn't writing about fictitious billionaire werewolves falling in love. Elevar expanded swiftly. Chicago, Boston, Seattle. Each new location was a private victory. Every contract executed was a reminder that I was no longer the girl excluded from Uncle Victor's library. Yet to the Blackwoods, I remained simply Aria, the assistant, the letdown, the overlooked one. That didn't concern me. Not when I was supporting genuine people like the team at Heartland Manufacturing, a generational equipment manufacturer in Wisconsin, facing imminent acquisition and dismantlement. When I discovered that Blackwood Enterprises, led by Uncle Victor, was targeting them, everything shifted. It wasn't merely about expansion anymore. It was about principles. While Blackwood Enterprises employed aggressive takeovers to dismantle companies for assets, Elevar adopted a different approach. We helped these enterprises recover. I established a specialized research division within Elevar. Confidential. Agile. They monitored acquisitions, identified Blackwood's methodologies. A distribution center in Philadelphia, a craft brewery in Portland, an agricultural cooperative in Iowa. We contacted them before Blackwood could finalize. "Allow us to examine your financial records first," our message stated. There might be an alternative approach. Many agreed. Those who did, we performed wonders for. Customized rehabilitation plans. Financial emergency response. Strategic redirection. Most never sold. They recovered and flourished. We were like corporate fairy godmothers, minus the singing mice and magical pumpkin carriages. Each time we preserved a company from Blackwood Enterprises, it felt like restoring equilibrium. But I never disclosed this. Not to the clients, not even to my team. To them, I was Aria, the operations manager who consistently delivered results. But during solitary moments, after extended nights of planning sessions or site visits, I'd wander through our New York headquarters, transparent partitions, vibrant with the energy of impact, and glimpse my reflection in the glass. Not an assistant, not an afterthought. A woman who had quietly altered the landscape. When Heartland Manufacturing faced a direct threat, I recognized it was time to emerge. Their heritage and 78 employees were about to be consumed by a Blackwood subsidiary. I couldn't allow it to happen. Our team constructed a counteroffer. Decisive. Comprehensive. We would invest in Heartland, not absorb them, preserve their workforce, enhance their innovation. And we possessed the financial capability to support it. Elevar had just secured a $350 million partnership with an international transportation conglomerate. The morning of the Heartland meeting, I stood at the front of our penthouse conference room. Expansive windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline. Construction. Sunlight. Movement. My tailored charcoal suit felt like protection. 10 years of silent determination compressed into every fiber. Madison, my executive assistant, arranged the documents with confidence. "They're all waiting downstairs," she said. "Media included." I straightened my jacket. Ready to show them that revenge is best served with a PowerPoint presentation and impeccable financial forecasts? She grinned. Absolutely. And I've got the catering set up for afterward. Nothing says "I told you so" like tiny gourmet sandwiches. For the first time in a decade, I wouldn't be behind the scenes. I'd enter that room as Aria Patel, founder and CEO of Elevar Consulting. Not for retribution. For every voice that had been disregarded, including my own. Transaction conditions. Ownership distribution. Consolidation. Influence. At exactly 9:15 a.m., the Blackwood Enterprises delegation arrived at the Metropolitan Tower conference level in downtown Manhattan. Uncle Victor, Blake, or Vanessa Blackwood? They didn't identify the woman at the head of the table. Not truly. To them, I remained the forgettable niece who once organized family gatherings and silently prepared reports no one requested. I stood in my tailored jacket and met their gaze with composure. "Good morning," I said evenly. "I'm Aria Patel, CEO of Elevar Consulting, and I'll be conducting today's discussion." The silence that followed was so thick you could have cut it with a knife and served it as an appetizer. Vanessa's designer pen slipped from her grasp and struck the table with a distinct sound. Blake's smirk vanished, jaw tensing as he flipped open his portfolio as if it might offer protection. Uncle Victor blinked repeatedly, narrowing his eyes as if examining my nameplate would alter what he was hearing. His expression reminded me of someone who just realized they'd been using their neighbor's Netflix account for years. "You?" he questioned. "CEO." I nodded, allowing the silence to lengthen before adding, "You never perceived me because you never attempted to see." I resisted the urge to add surprise, with jazz hands. I signaled to Madison, who distributed the proposal folders across the table, each sealed with Elevar's silver emblem. Inside, the complete merger proposal for Heartland Manufacturing supported by our 38% interest acquisition already secured through private arrangement. I calmly enumerated the strategic interventions we'd implemented in recent quarters: Brighton Textiles, Cascade Energy, Pioneer Medical Systems. All transactions they had pursued, all stabilized through Elevar intervention. The room grew still. My voice remained steady, but each statement landed with intention. I wasn't present for personal vengeance. I was here to reclaim the dignity countless families had forfeited to ruthless corporate seizures. Victor's expression remained fixed, but the tension in his posture betrayed him. Blake shuffled through the document, murmuring about legal complications. Vanessa whispered, "She's been observing us this entire time." I leaned forward. "You may sign the merger agreement, maintain partial benefit, or wait. In 14 days, I'll complete the market acquisition of Heartland's remaining shares. Elevar will establish control with or without your participation." I smiled pleasantly, the way one does when offering someone the last cookie, knowing full well you've got a whole other package hidden away. Victor pushed back his chair, departing without comment. Madison leaned toward me. "Do you want to suspend the meeting?" I shook my head. "No. Let them experience the transformation. And the complimentary pastries we'd ordered. No reason good business strategy can't come with good Danish." 20 minutes elapsed, and the conference room remained tense. Silent but charged like the atmosphere preceding a deluge. Then the door opened as Victor returned, expression resolved, but the intensity in his eyes had diminished. He sat. He signed, his pen moving across the document like a reluctant concession. I offered a respectful acknowledgement. Collected my folder and exited into the corridor. The Manhattan skyline gleamed through the glass. Summer breeze coursed through the atrium doors, sharp and invigorating. But I didn't feel warmth that afternoon. Elevar's private valuation increased by 21%. Blackwood Enterprises declined 9.7% for the first time. My name appeared on CNBC's evening segment. Aria Patel, the enigma behind Elevar's ascension. I had to explain to my mother that enigma didn't mean I was doing something illegal. I didn't savor their embarrassment. That moment wasn't intended for them. It was for every individual instructed to remain silent. For every business owner pressured into surrendering their life's achievement. 4 weeks later, I received formal notification. Elevar's 34% interest in Blackwood Enterprises entitled me to designate a candidate for their board. I didn't hesitate. The boardroom that day was colder than the temperature setting. An extended mahogany table, 14 chairs, and 14 pairs of eyes uncertain whether to retreat or pretend welcome. I entered wearing a deep burgundy suit. Heels striking with certainty. Their heritage was embedded in the architecture, but I carried something more substantial. Earned authority. Quiet but undeniable. Blake was absent. Removed by ethical inquiries connected to a failed acquisition scheme that finally caught up with him. Turns out his strategic golf games weren't quite as strategic as he'd hoped. I stood before the Blackwood Enterprises boardroom, surrounded by individuals who once regarded me as merely an assistant with illusions. My voice was measured, my message unmistakable. Blackwood Enterprises will no longer dismantle businesses to their foundation, I stated. We will rebuild them with integrity, with purpose. Initially silence, then gradual, tentative applause. Several acknowledgements from junior directors, then a wave of reluctant respect followed. Awkward? Certainly. But genuine. Much like a family Thanksgiving after someone has mentioned politics. A week later, Vanessa Blackwood sent a message containing a single sentence: "You accomplished the impossible. I would like to learn from you." I preserved it. Unread but not deleted. Perhaps someday I'd create a workshop titled, "How to Recognize Talent When It's Making Your Coffee." Uncle Victor submitted his resignation the following month. His letter was sincere, handwritten, and almost vulnerable. I misjudged you, Aria. You've demonstrated a superior approach. I folded it carefully and placed it beside my first investor agreement. Reminders of challenges overcome. Not through retaliation, but vision. At industry events, Victor began politely declining invitations, now documented in a trending video, quietly withdrawing from professional panels. No announcement. Just absence. Like socks in a dryer, he simply disappeared. At a San Francisco finance conference, I encountered Uncle Victor in the entrance hall. He didn't speak. Only offered a slight nod of recognition. These weren't trophies. They were vibrations. Indications that something in the structure was changing. A culture long dominated by acquisition and arrogance was learning, however gradually, to consider alternatives. Back at the Elevar office, I stood by the expansive window overlooking Central Park. Lights from the city shimmered like dreams waiting to materialize. I hadn't created this to demolish my history. I'd created it to redefine the future. The media eventually located me. I appeared on front pages and financial programs. But I selected my opportunities. The attention is influential, if applied wisely. I turned down a reality show offer called Boss Ladies. Apparently my life story wasn't dramatic enough without adding manufactured catfights and champagne throwing. At a San Francisco gala in 2025, I accepted the Visionary Leadership Award. Beneath an evening so perfect it seemed surreal. As I approached the podium, I surveyed a gathering of executives, academics, and innovators. I cleared my throat and smiled. 10 years ago, I began. My family laughed when I expressed my intention to establish a consulting firm. They suggested I marry strategically, not build boldly. The audience laughed with me. Warm, supportive, understanding laughter. I continued, I listened, I added, just not in the manner they intended. More laughter than attentiveness. Success isn't this award or recognition. It's receiving a message from a student that states, "I didn't believe I could until I witnessed you." I paused. Though I won't lie, the award looks fantastic in my office, right next to my participation trophy from 5th grade soccer. The applause resonated, extended, and vibrant. Invitations proliferated after that evening. Business institutions. Innovation conferences. Women's leadership forums. I accepted selectively, not to bask in attention, but to share the reality behind the recognition. I described the late evenings immersed in financial analyses. The mornings filled with uncertainty. The decisions to remain in obscurity until I was prepared to lead in visibility. The countless instant noodle dinners that fueled late nights at the office. I still can't look at ramen without experiencing spreadsheet flashbacks. In every audience I identified someone, a young woman, a quiet presence who reminded me of who I was. That's why I initiated the Elevar Foundation, a venture capital program for women-led startups, former assistants, single mothers, overnight workers turned tech founders. Not merely idealists, implementers. My spirit expanded not for the magnitude of Elevar, but for the extent of the aspirations we were inspiring. Then one morning, a simple cream envelope arrived on my desk, personally delivered and marked for Aria Patel, personal. Inside was a letter from Uncle Victor. I believed business was dominance and manipulation. You revealed something different. Humanity. I'm resigning permanently. I apologize. I sat in my chair, tea warm in my hands, not feeling triumphant but contemplative. Authentic change had occurred. Not just within me, but within the very system that once restricted me. I placed the letter into an Elevar strategy journal where we document our most significant shifts. Because sometimes justice arrives, not with fanfare, but with a signature and a quiet apology. In business, as in life, the most profound statements often come in the smallest envelopes. The first Elevar Foundation roundtable felt like daybreak surrounding me. Women whose voices had never been valued. Nurses, educators, immigrant entrepreneurs, their voices clear, confident, resolute. And I understood we weren't simply rebuilding businesses. We were rebuilding conviction. I recognized my journey mirrored in theirs. The pain of being disregarded. The quiet strength to rise regardless. Elevar was no longer merely a firm. It had become a beacon, calling to anyone who'd ever been told they were insufficient. I realized then my legacy wasn't inscribed in headlines or market valuations. It existed in the courage I helped awaken. The permission I granted others to dream fearlessly. 3 months following the Blackwood boardroom transformation, my existence was unrecognizable. No more concealing behind job descriptions or behind-the-scenes influence. I was Aria Patel, a symbol for those once dismissed. The world finally perceived me. But I remained grounded. Selecting purpose over prominence. At a conference in Chicago, I told an assembly of young women. Authority isn't bestowed upon you. It's constructed quietly and methodically. Even when no one notices. I added with a smile, and sometimes, the best revenge isn't just success, it's success with spectacular shoes. Elevar thrived. But the Elevar Foundation became my essence. Supporting women who'd been ignored yet now established ventures flourishing like wildflowers after rainfall. Once a girl was ridiculed for dreaming excessively. Now I ascend not to prove anyone incorrect, but to demonstrate that you can ascend too. If Aria's journey inspires you, subscribe and share your perspective below. Let's build courageously together. And maybe laugh a little along the way, because nothing confuses the naysayers quite like succeeding with a smile.